So I am recording this video for CS401 Project 2. Unfortunately, my screen capturing application doesn't allow me to capture Java windows like this one, so I'm going to be recording this from my phone. So in our Project 2, we have three primary classes, which are mainWindow.java, addressBookTest.java, and addressBook.java and addressEntry.java. Those two each have their own associated test classes. And main window is going to hold our main method. It has a JFrame, a JList, and an address book. These are the GUI structures and the data structure that we're using to store our information. So the main method is going to make this connection to our database using an Oracle driver, making a connection, and then using this connection to populate all of our entries from our database and put them into our actual address book. Here, addressbook.add, where you see we're instantiating these new address entries. We're then going to create the main window, which will use our JList and instantiate it directly off of address book's address entry list, which is a good segue into checking out over here. So if you see an address book, we built our entire address book application. We rebuilt it around a default list model. And that's because before we were using, I think, array lists or vectors. By building it around the default list model, we're able to avoid having any unnecessary data structures, so that now when we modify our address book using methods like add, for example, it's going to directly modify this list model, which our JList will be able to dynamically read these changes and adapt to them as we make them. This is going to save us some time and also some headaches in converting between certain data structures and other ones. Address book is implemented, like I said, as one of these lists of an address entry, which is more or less a glorified struct that contains several fields along with setters and getters for those fields. Yeah, without further ado, we can go ahead and run our application. So this does take a minute to load. And so you can go ahead and see, I'll zoom in a little bit. So we have our Java application now running. If we hit display, it's going to pull in everything, or everything's already been pulled in from the database. So it's going to display that data from our database. And if we go ahead and open up our address entry table, you can see that these two lists correspond to each other. They're not going to be displayed in the same sorted order because this is going to be displayed by a sorted last name. But if we were to take, for example, Ingrid and remove her, and then we go ahead and reopen our database because for some reason the refresh function doesn't seem to always be quick. You can see that Ingrid is now gone from the database, which is what we just did. If we want to go ahead and add a new entry, we can do that. Because I'm doing this with one hand, I'll just make it something kind of gibberish. I'll make sure that it does follow, however, our input verification. So this will have to start with numbers followed by some letters. City will just be some letters. State, let's put California just because we can. Zip code has to be 5 digits. Email has to be something at something dot something. And then phone number, let's do numbers dash numbers dash numbers. And so our first name, let's give it a more creative name. Let's say Tom. Let's say Bauer. Tom Bauer. We go ahead and confirm. Tom Bauer, as we can see, has been added to our local GUI. And if we go over here and refresh our database, we can see that Tom Bauer has now been added in. He has a unique identifier associated with him with all of the gibberish fields that we gave him. And lastly, if we go back into our application, we can do a search. Let's go ahead and search for that Bauer that we just added. Here he is. And so you can see this is more or less everything in our application. And thank you for watching.